We've been digging around in our virtual mailbag and have brought a couple of questions from you to discuss. I've got our first question. This is from Adam in Cardiff, who asks, does it matter who was elected in the Welsh Labour leadership election? It seems that both candidates had a very similar platform. Does the selection of Vaughan Gething have political implications in Westminster? So this was the Economy Minister and former Health Minister of Wales, Vaughan Gething's narrow victory over Jeremy Miles, who's the Education Minister, in the election to replace Mark Drakeford as First Minister and also Welsh Labour leader. And I think I do agree with our questioner to an extent. It wasn't exactly a leadership contest riven by huge ideological divides. Not like we saw actually in the replacement for Nicola Sturgeon, where you did actually get sort of a genuine sort of debate between two front runners, Hamza Yousaf and Kate Forbes.
No, it wasn't a battle for the soul of the party.
Yeah, they represented different parts of the SNP. Yeah. Gething and Miles, they're kind of, I would say they were sort of both centrists. I think they're both solicitors by trade, both from South Wales, and they've both served under Drakeford, associated with his administration. And there weren't huge differences in their manifestos, really. I think Gething had more of a focus on health, Miles more of a focus on climate, but there weren't sort of radical differences between their policies. No, they ticked the boxes.
You sort of had, we want a national care service, but there was nothing to show how they were going to deliver it. Yeah. They both committed to the review into the 20 mile per hour speed limit, which was already the government's policy. There was a debate over who should run that review. So they were quite small debates, I think, that were happening. The broad, general, centre-left, inclusive government with a focus on net zero and sustainability was shared by both. And that, as you say, Anoosh, I think that's in part because they were part of Mark Drakeford's government, and they are both represent, I think, continuity in that respect. But it's also because I don't think there is that fundamental disagreement within the party about where it should go. And I think you saw that as well because you had these debates about Gething, about much more personal, bitter issues. And I think that's always a sign that the policy issues aren't dominating the conversation.
Yeah, that's very true. If you're highlighting, things that might call your opponent's judgment into question rather than his sort of policy leanings, then, and we should say actually, if any of our listeners haven't been following, this is the controversy over taking 200 grand's worth of donor money from a company which was run by a man who's twice been convicted for environmental offences. And the questions are over whether you should take money from someone who has been convicted in that way, and also whether you should take that much money for a leadership contest at all. And that was sort of hanging over Gething's victory like a cloud, as well as the fact that because he was health minister during the pandemic, he's been before the COVID inquiry, and there's not necessarily been a great deal of flattering things coming out about that. He was found not to have read vital documents, lost his WhatsApps, which seems to be,
everyone's been doing it,
a regular error by people who are before those committees. And so I suppose in terms of political implications, because I think that's what our questioner is asking, I suppose there are some in terms of like he's a bit more high profile, and perhaps there was a bit more sort of scandal or questions hanging around him than there was around Jeremy Miles, just for those reasons.
Yeah, I think that's right. He now has to deal with those issues. So the key thing is that we've had some members of the Senate essentially in private question that donation and whether he should give the money back. So he has to deal with this internal disagreement over what he did. He has to bring the party together. He's going to have to appoint his cabinet, and I'm sure those things will be on his mind. He's also got this looming negotiation with Plaid Cymru over there because they're helping Labour pass laws in the Senate. So that's looming as well, that renegotiation, and Plaid Cymru have been quite critical of that donation. So it's quite a bitter, uncelebratory mood, I think. I don't think people were jumping up and down with joy throughout the campaign, saying this is the future of the Welsh Labour Party. So the problem, perhaps, in going back to the politics of it, is that he will have to focus on these internal issues before he can look at the policy disagreements. And there are many. We mentioned that the speed limit, they got a review into that. We've had this long tractor protest from the farmers who are very disconcerted about environmental regulations that the Welsh government's imposing, essentially saying that they have to plant more trees on their land. We've had Steve Reid, who said to me in an interview, I think the week before last, that they should reconsider. So there is pressure building on the government to move on some of these issues. I just don't think there's going to be a huge amount of disagreement from the new First Minister than from the last.
Yes, that's right. And actually, maybe that's the problem. Maybe that means that he is vulnerable to Conservative attacks, particularly from Westminster on those issues, 20 miles per hour speed limits, the farmers' protest, but also, you know, the crisis in the Welsh NHS. He was health minister. The NHS is performing badly in Wales. And so you do get those regular attack lines from Conservatives that are saying, well, you know, look at Wales, it's worse there, or it's just as bad there.
Yeah, it was also, I mean, on that, that's one of Rishi Sunak's favourite attack lines in PMQs.
Yes, exactly.
Is to say to Keir Starmer, look, we can't trust you on the NHS because it's not doing very well in Labour-run Wales.
Yeah.
Which points to an interesting point about the Welsh leadership campaign, that there was a huge focus on the general election as well. I think obviously the First Minister, or the Welsh party leader, will be leading the general election campaign this year. So that was also at the forefront of their minds.
It's also worth saying that his win is significant for other reasons. I think he's the first black leader of any European nation. And also he's now the third non-white leader of a UK nation alongside Rishi Sunak and Hamza Yousaf. And I always find this quite interesting because both the progressive left and the Conservative establishment never quite know what to do with developments like this, because on the left side, and we've spoken about this together on the podcast, representation doesn't equal sort of ideological purity for them. So
and they get angry about it.
Yeah, exactly. But then on the other side, you know, it kind of undermines this idea that multiculturalism in the UK is broken, some kind of sort of dead doctrine. So you know, while he's made a celebration of it, it's sometimes quite funny to watch both sides not being able to grapple with this information that tells a good story about Britain.
Thanks so much for watching. We'd love to know what you think. Please make sure you leave your comments below. And if you enjoyed watching this podcast, you can watch more of our videos on our YouTube channel. And don't forget to like and subscribe.